Hey, this week we got some awesome fishing with some of the best fish you'll see this year. Jason Quinn takes us into some deep water with some great spoon techniques in depth. In our Art of Angling, Rick Clunn explains why he uses one style rod for all his fishing. First up, my good friend Tim Horton shows us step-by-step how a GPS and fish finder can give you a head start when fishing a new lake. It's this week's Fishing in 4.
Years ago, people referred to these just simply as fish finders, but now there's so much more than that. We have GPS technology, capabilities to go out and mark a waypoint, go back to that waypoint. They tell you so much more than just where the fish are. I have this setting now currently on map, and I'm actually looking at a map of Lake Guntersville. I have an avionics chip in here that shows me the contour lines of exactly where the drop-offs are, where the river channels are, or any other features that may be on the map. The most asked question I get is, what do you do? How do you set them up? I'm gonna show you exactly how I keep mine set up and how I run it. Now let's take a look at exactly how I like my sonar settings. This is where I see a lot of people mess up. I simply go to menu, I'm gonna go to ping speed, P-I-N-G. When it's shooting that sonar down to the bottom and coming back up, that's the speed at which it does it. I like to keep mine at 100%. Unless I'm in real shallow water or I'm fishing around grass, I'll take it back to maybe 75, 50%. Another important feature is chart speed. Chart speed is something that I like to keep on about 50 to 75%. I've currently got it set on 75. I don't like it going real fast. As you can see, when you cut it up to 100%, everything shoots off the screen pretty quickly. So what I like to do is back it down to about 50 to 75%. That's going to allow that ping rate to really hit real fast, but yet my chart to slow down. That's going to give me a real accurate reading when I'm going over those fish or bait fish. We've got our settings set. Now with the engine running, let's go out around the lake and take a look. The first thing I want to show you here is how good this split screen works. As you see, we're coming up on the map here. This cursor shows where the boat is. We're coming up this ledge up the river channel, and you can see the sonar reading that we're coming up. We started out in 30, we've come all the way up to 15 foot of water. Subtle changes are very important to notice. We've been on this flat in about 10 foot of water, and here I've come up on this little rise that comes up to 8.5 feet. Now I want to mark it. I'm going to take my cursor and move it over to where the very top of that rise is and hit a waypoint. Now I've got that waypoint saved, and I can always go back to it at any time during the day. Here in just a moment, we're gonna go to a different part of the lake, and I'm gonna bring you back to waypoint number 137, which is where we just marked that high spot. All right, we've idled around this flat here, and what I tried to find was little details in it. I found one high spot. I marked it on waypoint. It's number 137. Let's go back to that waypoint. I go to the waypoints, the ones that are saved, and then I just punch in number 137. Then I'm gonna hit go to waypoint, and I'm 0.23 miles away. Now the real important aspect of this is gonna put me exactly on the spot that we marked earlier. Let's go take a look. There it is, 8 foot. That is so neat to be able to find those high spots on these flats, and that's how you're gonna find the fish. Let's see if we can catch one. Customization is the key. Don't take these units and only use them on their factory settings. Set them to what's best for where you fish. Look at that toad.
Jason Quinn knows sometimes bass feed deep on bait fish. What lure would you use to get down there to them? Jason will explain as we go in depth.
There's not a quicker way to put a limit of fish in the boat than throwing a jigging spoon. It's a bait that I keep tied on, that I fish about anywhere in the country. And I've had great success with it everywhere. Anytime the fish are relating to structure or just relating to creek channels or bait. Everybody thinks of a jigging spoon as sitting there, vertical jigging, a real slow process, but it's not. You can cover the whole water column very effectively. Cover the whole water column very effectively. Very effectively. Try to get down there. Those fish is down about 30. There's Miss Buddy. She knocked the boat out of it. Show you a little trick. You know, first thing in the morning, I like to start off on those bigger flats at the mouths of the creeks. You're coming off of that nighttime feeding frenzy, and a lot of those fish are up on the flats. That bait's up there, there's perch are up there. Everything that a bass wants to feed on is up there on those flats. Good gracious. Perch are just drilling it. Gosh, perch. So I like to start off the morning there, and that kind of gives me a clue on where those fish are located. If I find that those fish are not out there on those flats first thing in the morning, then I'll just kind of move inside the creek to see if those fish are starting to migrate in there. And once I know that, I know what to go do next. If they're not inside those creeks, they're out there on the main lake still in their deep summertime haunts. They hadn't migrated up yet. But those flats are key. There's one. That's bass. And perch was up high, suspended up, them bass on the bottom, so I just barely jerked that spoon. There we go. There, get them fired up. I threw it in there and them perch was hitting it on the way down, so I know them perch were up high, but I let that spoon go all the way to the bottom and just barely jump it off the bottom about 6 inches. That's where those bass are laying. Those bass are out there laying on the bottom underneath those big schools of perch, just waiting for one of those perch to get out of line or die off or whatever, and that spoon imitates those perch perfectly. So I'm fishing it all kind of ways. I got one perch banging me there. Not only am I fishing that spoon too close to the bottom, but I can jump it up 6 or 7 feet off the bottom to try to catch some of those suspended fish also. There's one. You knocked the fool out of there. She's gonna jump. Oh, that's a better fish. I see that fish there was about 7 or 8 foot off the bottom, and I jumped that spoon up, and those suspended fish, she come and got it. There we go. That's a good fish. Good keeper fish. There's schools of fish down there like that. If you can get them triggered in the feeding, you can have a blast. Most of those fish are not going to be dead up on the middle of those flats. They're going to be right on the edge of those flats, right there where it's adjacent to deep water. They want to get up there, get them a quick meal, and get back off, especially this time of year. You know, we're in late summer, early fall. The weather's still hot. The fish are really not, they're not really on anything. They're not a pattern to it. The only pattern that they are is on bait. So you've got to put something down there in front of their face and kind of keep it there and trigger those fish into biting. There she is, buddy. She knocked the fool out of it. They come down there. Because they're not out there feeding. They're just sitting out there suspended, waiting on some type of weather change or something to trigger those fish before they can go into their fall migration. Buddy, and she just come back and got it and just couldn't stand it. What's happening is there's a school of fish down there, and they're just out there suspended. But once you get them fired up, buddy, you can have a blast catching them like that.
Here's something to keep in mind. Don't just limit yourself with your jigging spoons. Some of my best trips ever have been in lakes that are full of grass, casting that jigging spoon on the outside edge of that grass. You'll be amazed at what you'll catch.
thing about that jigging spoon is you can cast it a mile. You can cover a lot of water. You can cover in one cast what a guy can sit there with a crankbait and not cover in 50 casts. My rod and reel combination is very important in this technique. For one, I like a 7-to-1 Pflueger Summit reel wide spool. I like the wide spool because it holds a lot of line. I like the 7-to-1 because it's a fast gear ratio. And as you've seen, those fish will hit you when that spoon's jumping way up, and you've got to pick up that slack real quick. This is where a 7.5-foot medium heavy action all-star rod comes into play. It's not a real heavy action rod that jerks the bait away from them, and it's not a real medium action rod where it's kind of too limber to keep the fish hooked up. So that's very important. You're making long casts, so you need that longer rod to take up that slack. This is also a technique that you don't need light line. I fish 20-pound fluorocarbon exclusively when I'm spoon fishing. One of the key things that I'm doing, when those fish are suspended, I'm jumping that spoon up off the bottom, but I'm holding my rod at about a 1 o'clock angle. That allows me all the momentum I need to set the hook. But if you'll notice, I'm also keeping my fingers right there on the line, because when those fish hit you suspended, a lot of times it's just a real small tick. When you jerk that spoon up, it won't fall, and you'll know right quick. That's a good one there. Good fish. If you'll notice, one of the things about every fish I've caught, pretty much all of them been on that hook. That's that VMC Sure Set hook. But when you've got that hook in him, it acts like a big worm hook, and it's very hard for him to get rid of. Ah, I got it. That's what is you talking about thumping it? I'm sitting on top of the ridge right now. I'm sitting up here in about 20, 21 feet of water, but I'm casting out there into the creek channel in 30 feet of water. If I can get that school of fish triggered to bite, 9 out of 10 times when you catch one, those other fish are going to follow that fish. These fish are used to feeding up on these ridges and up on these underwater points instead of out there suspended. Once you catch that fish, the other ones follow that fish in here. A lot of times, once you pull that school of fish up here onto this ridge, you may only catch 1 or 2 throwing out there, but you've pulled that whole school of fish up here on the ridge. A lot of times you can get out there where you were casting and throw up onto the ridge and have a heyday, because this is where they're used to feeding. One of the first things I do when I take a spoon out of the pack, because it needs a little work, one of the first things I do is, you notice it does not come with a clip or a split ring at all. That's very important. You want to add an oversized split ring just to keep from line twisting. If you don't put a split ring on there and you put a snap or tight directly, you'll have just unbelievable line twist. But that right there eliminates most of your line twist, and it gives that spoon still enough that when it flutters to the bottom, it looks like a dying, wounded bait fish. The next thing I do is I take that hook that comes on it, I take that off. Every time I'm throwing a spoon, especially in tournaments, I go to that Sure Set hook, because I am a 125% believer that once that hook's in that fish, he cannot throw that spoon. That's as simple as it gets. Now, spoons come in a couple different shapes and sizes. You know, here, notice I'm using a smooth spoon, a slick-sided spoon. Most spoons you see are hammered. Hopkins does make this slick-sided spoon, and you can get them at Bass Pro Shops. That's one of the only places that you can get this smooth-sided Hopkins spoon. The sizes I like to throw, there's 2 sizes. This is the 101, which is 1 ounce, and this is the 150, which is 1.5 ounces. You can notice that they're 2 little bit separate sizes. One's about a 1/2 inch shorter than the other one. A lot of times, those fish will get keyed in on a little bit smaller bait fish, but you still got enough weight to get that spoon down there to those depths that you're fishing. When I'm spoon fishing, I limit it to 2 colors. I like gold when it's high, bright bluebird days, and the water's just from clear to stained, it doesn't matter. When I'm spoon fishing, I use gold when it's a real clear day. And I'll use nickel, silver, on those cloudy, overcast, dark days. She got that feather too, buddy. A lot of times when those fish are sitting there and you can't get them triggered, I'll show you a little trick. A lot of times those fish are sitting there and you can't get them triggered to feed. So what I'll do is I'll just put you a little leader in a swivel, put you I like a number 4 treble with feathers on it, and you slide that over your line. And what that does is when that spoon is sinking, this feather separates, but when you jerk that spoon back up, it looks like the spoon is chasing this treble hook, but it imitates a shad chasing a smaller bait fish. And a lot of times those fish won't key in on that spoon, they'll key in on that one, just as that fish right there did. I got them fired up down there now, that's a good one there. That's a big fish, boy, she's head shaking. Like I said, I got them fired up now. That's a good one. Like I said, them fish are suspended. That fish hit me a good 10 foot off the bottom. Oh yeah, that's a good school fish. See, you know, fired up, that hook has got the corner of his jaw. That old nickel spoon, them fish are sitting in 30 feet of water. They're about 10 foot off the bottom, and the only way to catch them is that spoon. You can reel a crankbait through there and you can't get them fired up. Nothing imitates a dime bait better than that spoon. And like I said, you can vary your retrieve and always get those fish to bite.
The only thing that I flip with anymore is heavy fluorocarbon or braided line. And if you're going to use braid like this, make sure you take a marker, even though it's green. You know, that marker will make that line real black, and as it's falling through the cover, the fish aren't going to see it. So I'll take 3 or 4 feet of that line, use it with a black permanent marker, and color it up real good, and you're going to still get a lot of bites. As long as the water's dirty, you know, it's not a problem.
Here's something that's sure to start an argument. Do you need one rod or many types of rods? Rick Klein talks about coming full circle, and he just uses one rod in all situations in today's art of angling.
You know, in today's art of angling, things tend to go full circle. You know, I started out with fishing only 3 rods. I evolved eventually where I had 10 rods for 10 different techniques. Now, I've actually gone back to fishing 1 rod for every technique, and that's what we're going to discuss today in the art of angling. You know, modern day anglers have a boat full of rods, and I'm no different. I still fish 10 rods, even though it's one action nowadays, where most anglers have a different action for every single technique out there. I've kind of evolved back to the other way. In my quest for simplicity, I now use a heavy action 7-foot rod for every technique. I want you to remember though, as I'm speaking, I do it in the context of my style. So if you're thinking about trying to adapt to this, then remember that. I'm kind of like a basketball player. I don't want to have to, every time I change rods, to adjust to a different action rod, a different speed reel. My reels are the same, and it's like a basketball player. Every time he shoots, he changes the size of the ball. So the only thing I'm adjusting to is the weight of my lure. But I get away with this, and let me explain why, because it's my style. It fits my style. I'm a power fisherman. I fish large baits. I fish a little bit heavier line than most people. The beauty of one rod for me is that it becomes a perfect extension of my body, and thus what that means is I really don't have to think about it. I don't have to make any major adjustments, maybe the weight of the lure, and that's it. When I pick it up, it feels the same, it casts the same. The actions of my lure feel the same, which most people don't think about when they change rods. When you change rods, that potentially all changes, and you've got that adjustment period. And I don't want to have that adjustment period. The only thing I want to have to adjust to would be maybe the weight of the lure, and I can do that very quickly. Whereas you're changing rods, believe it or not, you might have about a 30-minute adjustment period before you feel comfortable with that rod again, before it's an extension of your body. And essentially, it's like a troll motor in the sense that I don't think about it. It too is an extension of my body, and I run it at a subconscious level. Your conscious brain should be left to figure out what the fish are doing. The most important function of a rod in the old days was how well it casts lures. For me, that's not the most important function. The most important function for me is how well it hooks and lands fish. And I want a heavy action rod because these big fish suck the lure into the crunchers, and when it gets there, if you don't move it, you don't hook them. So that's again why I have chose this rod. It's the one that slowly has shown me that it's by far the best at hooking and landing fish. If you're struggling in certain areas, especially with this hooking and landing fish, you might consider at least trying a heavier action rod. I use it for everything. Is that what you need to do? That's up to you.